going on, everybody? Welcome to Chop Brew. I am Chip Walton, hanging out on my front porch in St. Paul, Minnesota. This episode is going to be a chop episode. I'm going to attempt to keep it kind of short because time is of the essence. Thanksgiving is just a few days away. Most likely, many of you are going to have a turkey on your Thanksgiving dinner table, which also means that with just a little bit of extra effort, few pieces of equipment, you should also have turkey stock in your fridge and freezer about a day later. That's what we're talking about in this episode, making turkey stock at home. While I don't claim to be a master at making turkey stock, Elsa and I have perfected what we consider a pretty awesome process over the last 5 or 10 years. We've made stock many times. So we're about to take you into our kitchen, show you the method of the madness that we use to get the turkey stock, and walk you through the process. It's really easy. It's really actually pretty fun. And in the end, you're left with a big old stash of turkey stock to use for the year ahead. So come with us and let's get our stock on. Making stock at home is a pretty easy process. You just need a few pieces of equipment and some ingredients. For the equipment, Elsa and I have a plug-in roaster oven. I think it's a 16 quart, so it holds a lot. You could also do this in a stock pot, a brew kettle, or possibly even a roaster pan in the oven, although I'm not sure if you want to go that route just because it does steep or it simmers for a long time. You're gonna need a strainer spoon, or as I call it, the basket scoop, but some kind of slotted or strainer-fied spoon. A mesh strainer if possible, a really fine mesh strainer, and some 1 gallon zip sealed bags. That's what we're gonna store this stock in and freeze it for future use. As far as the ingredients, there are definitely some things that everybody seems to say you need to use. Obviously, the carcass of a turkey. So the bones can have a little bit of meat on it, but you want to get a lot of the meat off so you can use it for sandwiches and soups and stews or whatever. But you can leave some meat on the bone and some fat on the bone. Definitely going to want onion and carrots and celery, herbs like bay leaf, parsley, red pepper flakes, sage, rosemary. I even use garlic and a couple of other things that I'm not really sure you necessarily need to use during the stock phase, because you could add those whenever you make the soup or whatever you're going to use the stock for. But I throw a lot more in than most people probably do. So we're talking cloves of garlic, either whole, chopped, or minced, black pepper, red pepper flakes as I mentioned. So the process is pretty easy. After you're done eating your Thanksgiving, we're going to chop up a couple of carrots, some celery, some onion, and the garlic. We're going to keep those in fairly large pieces. They don't have to be diced or minced or chopped real fine. They're going to kind of extract the flavors regardless. You're going to chop all that up, put it in a bowl, set it aside. Next, you're going to attack that turkey carcass. You're going to remove most of the usable meat from the turkey for, you can use that for your sandwiches and your soups and your stews. You can leave a little meat on these bones though, because that'll help flavor the stock. It'll also help add some fat and some flavor. You're going to break that carcass into small sections of meat / bone / fat. Basically, you want to break them down so that they're small enough to fit inside the roaster pan or the pot or whatever it is you're using and be covered completely with water. Fill the roaster pan with enough water to cover said pieces of turkey carcass, and then we're going to add those carrots and those onions and those celeries. We're going to make sure that those are also covered with water, so you may need to give it a little stir, or you may even need to add just a little bit more water. And these vegetables are going to add a lot of flavor. These root vegetables are going to give a lot of essence to the stock, that oniony goodness, the sweetness of the carrot, the celery, that kind of dry bite of the celery. And then we're going to go for the herbs. The herbs that we love to use are things like bay leaves, rosemary, sage, Italian style parsley, red pepper flakes, ground oregano, black pepper. Herbs, you can kind of leave them still on the stem if they're whole, because those stems also have a lot of flavors that you're going to leach out during this long simmering process. Add the garlic cloves. Again, they can be whole, chopped, or minced. We kind of did a little combo. And then you're going to stir all of that in, make sure it's well incorporated, make sure it's all kind of dissolved, and then you're going to put the lid on the roaster. Set the initial temperature for about 250. We want to try to bring this mixture up to kind of a gentle boil, and then we're going to go into simmering mode. But 250 should help you get the heat up pretty quickly. After a couple hours, this mixture should reach a temperature of about 190 Fahrenheit. I find that to be kind of the sweet spot where it's not quite boiling, but it's a nice simmer. It's leaching all of those good flavors out of all the different components that you've put in there. And even after this first couple of hours, you'll notice that the liquid is already starting to get a little dark, a little rich, a little fat, starting to thick up. Put the lid back on at 190, and let's reduce the heat down to about 180 or 190. That way we never hit an actual boil. We just kind of keep this a low, slow simmer. We want the stock to simmer for hours without coming to an actual boil, and we leave it overnight. The next morning, you remove the lid. It smells amazing. The house smells amazing from the moment you start going downstairs. You're gonna notice that the stock is way darker. The veggies have become pretty soft and wilted and broken down. The meat and fat has pretty much fallen off the bone. As you can see here from the video of last year's stock session, the temperature remained at about 190 after those 8 hours of overnight. So now what we're gonna do is we wanna remove all the solids from this stock. So we're gonna remove the larger pieces of the carcass and the vegetables using a straining spoon, or the basket scoop, as I like to call it. Another thing you can do here, even though while it's still warm, is use paper towels to remove some of the fat from the surface of the stock. If you kind of swipe these paper towels across the top, fat will cling to it. I don't like wasting paper towels, but this is a good way to get it. You can also remove this fat once it's chilled, which we're about to do in the next step. Luckily, one of the benefits of living in Minnesota in the winter is your porch is pretty damn chilly already come Thanksgiving. This year we're already in the 20s. Last year it was the same story. So we're talking about 8 hours of cooking. I bring it out to the front porch where it's about 20 degrees, and it took about 8 hours to bring the stock down to the upper 40s. If you're not lucky enough to have a 20-degree front porch around Thanksgiving like we are, you can also do an ice bath and put your roaster pan or your kettle or your stock pot in there and try to get the temperature down. But I do think you want to get it down fairly quickly, or at least eventually, so that you can skim some of that fat off, and also so you're not putting something that's near boiling into a freezer and taking up a lot of that cold effort that it takes to cool it down. Once the stock is chilled, again, you can skim some of that fat from the surface, either using a slotted spoon or the paper towel method. The next step is to strain the stock. Using a measuring cup, I pull out a measuring cup at a time of the stock and pour it through a fine mesh strainer into this large bowl, which happens to be an even bigger measuring cup essentially. This helps pull out the smaller bits of spices, herbs, meat that's still left behind, bone. We want to get this stock as clear, free of solids as possible. We fill our collection vessel with about 6 cups of stock for individual bagging. You could do less if you wanted smaller increments to use for the future. Some people have even suggested freezing in ice cube trays and storing small ice cubes that you can pull out 1, 2, half dozen, whatever you need for cooking as you use them. For the most part, we just use these big bags and use them for soups, one batch at a time. Now we're gonna bag this stock. This is how we're ultimately gonna store it and freeze it for future use. You're going to pour the stock into high quality 1-gallon zip seal bags for storage and freezing. We use an ice cream bucket at this point to hold the bag in place and to kind of keep it stable, make this step a little bit easier. You want to try to get as much air out of the bag as possible so the stock has some space to expand as it freezes. 6 cups of stock should fill a 1-gallon bag about halfway when held upright. And again, this is pretty much the way that we do it. You're going to repeat that step a couple of times, as many increments of 6 cups or less that you have. We usually end up with about 4 freezer bags when we do this in our 16-quart roaster pan. The last step is to freeze the stock. Now, while we've made stock at least a half dozen times before last year, I kind of had a mind lapse, and the way that I stored them in the freezer really kind of bit me in the butt. Check it out. This is the next day after the stock has been frozen. Here's a tip, one to grow on, however. My stock is frozen in place because it expanded beyond the little grid of the drawer. So now I'm gonna have an issue getting that out. So just as you think about where to freeze your stock, make sure maybe put it in a container that'll actually the Tupperware that'll hold it, or put these bags into even inside of a Tupperware just to get into a square shape or something. But so think about how the freezing is going to happen. That's right. We froze ourselves right into a corner. The stock expanded in the grids of our freezer drawer basket and made it very difficult to remove. I literally had to cut the bags open, chisel the stock until I could pull them out of the drawer, then reseal in new bags. Just an all-around snafu and a huge waste of gallon Ziploc bags. I suggest you try to freeze your bags flat. You can kind of stack them on top of each other, or at least put them in maybe like a box lid or a cookie sheet or something to kind of keep them firm and stable. Again, don't let them freeze in a way that makes them difficult to remove from your freezer. But once they're frozen solid, you can stack them upright, however you want to stack them in your freezer. Usage and storage, I don't really know much about how long it'll store or how long I should recommend it store. We've used stock up to a year later, but generally we'll tear through those 4 bags in, basically over the winter. Sometimes we'll forget we have one and we'll be like, oh man. But this makes a really rich stock with a lot of flavor. It's got a lot of color already. And again, because we put garlic and red pepper flakes, it's actually got a lot of kind of character and kick to it. So if you want to keep it a little more tame, you could probably just do those root vegetables and some bay leaf, the rosemary, and then add garlic and red pepper at the time that you make the soup. So basically you can pull it out and let it thaw, which would be the smart thing to do about a day in advance in your refrigerator. Or if you are just slammed for time, you can take it out, chop it up into a couple of big chunks of stock ice, just put those on low in your soup pot or your kettle or whatever you're using, and kind of just thaw it that way. And then just treat it like your base stock. You might need to add a little water depending what you're making. It really is a fun process, and it's literally become part of our holiday tradition around here. After we eat and kind of hang out and digest, we always go in there and chop up our veggies, destroy a carcass, and make some yummy stock. So I hope this has helped inspire some of you and maybe take away some of the apprehension about doing this. You can do this with chicken, you can do this with beef bones, you can do it, we've made fish, like taking the shells left over after shrimp boils, and done this. Basically anything can be simmered to make a stock. You always want to put in that trifecta, I think, of onion, celery, and carrot. Let me know how your experience making stock goes. You can hit us up on all the social medias of Chop and Brew, Twitter, Facebook. If you like the cutting board that you saw being used in this episode, that is also something you can buy. Great holiday gift for loved ones. You go to chopandbrew.com, click the C&B Superstore. My friend Tyler Osland, a pro brewer, home brewer, and woodworker, makes those right here in the Twin Cities. They're beautiful. They make great gifts. So until the next time we have a timely holiday to throw together a super quick episode about. Chop for chop, brew for brew.